30 minutes out, 30 seconds out. Alright, we got audio.
Alright, go check it out.
Monitoring. KCYP 97.7 FM, the city. I want to welcome everyone that is listening to us via 97.7 FM, that frequency. Also want to welcome everyone that is listening to us over the city977.com, as well as on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. We have a very important person in the studio today. Of course, I want to welcome everyone to our show, Money Talks. And as you know, our focus is education. And when the show like Money Talks, we need to bring the subject matter experts into the studio. In this case, we have a gentleman who is here to talk to us about a whole list of things. But I want to tell you a little bit about his background. His name is Ruben Loeing. He is a Navy SEAL. He served our country proudly. And he was in the SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 4.
Yes, and I was in Panama for 3 years supporting SEAL Team 4. While I was down there. I ran the Air Operations Department, so if a Navy SEAL did it on an aircraft, any aspect of it, I was in charge of it. Those are free fall jump master. I got about 700 free falls.
Fantastic.
During that time.
Fantastic. Outstanding. Now, he is with an organization called WFG, World Financial Group. And the question for today's show is your money controlling you, or are you controlling your money? And that's the topic of today's show. Welcome, Ruben. Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you so much. You know, your focus on financial literacy, this book, Saving Your Future, was published in 2015. So I'm part of World Financial Group, which got its roots back in the 70s. They call it the practice company, right? There was a guy. He was a really dynamic speaker, leader. He was a football coach and high school coach, and his father died when he was like 15, and he had a whole life policy of about $15,000. It was just barely enough to cover the funeral. So he and his brother had to work to keep mom and the rest of their brothers and sisters in the house and with food on the table. And he went to college and got a degree and followed his father's footsteps, bought a whole life policy from the same agent that sold his father a whole life policy, except he read the prospectus, he read the policy, and he figured out what it meant, and it made him angry. Okay? And he learned about, so there's a whole life been around for a very long time, and it means you are covered. You have coverage. You have protection for your whole life. Now you have to pay a premium for your whole life, but you're covered, and your premium goes into the insurance company's general account, and they give you a return a little bit better than a bank CD or savings. And there's tax advantages. You don't pay tax on the gain of it, and the benefit, you don't pay tax on the death benefit. Well, but the fees are very high, the commissions are high. That's why agents like to sell them. They make a good commission, but your money doesn't perform very well with them. So he went on a campaign of buy term and invest the difference, and he created the largest insurance agency in the history of the world, and it was named after him, A.L. Williams. And he ended up selling that company to Citibank, and it became Prime America. And his top agent, when Citibank restructured the commissions, lost $250,000 in that month. He's like, well, that ain't gonna happen anymore. He started his own company, and there was another company at the time that they didn't have a sales force. They had just a product, and it was Western Reserve Life, and they were one of the leaders in the variable universal life. So in between, there was E.F. Hutton. You remember those commercials when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen? Well, they had the first universal life product, and the vehicle, the investment within the policy was a 10-year treasury. And they, I don't know if you, I remember my first mortgage on my first house, I bought a VA repo, was 10%. Okay, so the 10-year treasury, the mortgage interest rates follow the 10-year treasury. Okay. And so that was a pretty good investment at the time, right? And they tore it up. His agency he started, called WMA, World Marketing Alliance. They blew it up, and they got a lot of attention on Wall Street for the Western Reserve Life, and they got bought out by this large conglomerate. It's one of the 8th largest financial companies in the world, called Aegon. They're out of The Hague in the Netherlands, and they've got a long history in the United States. They were actually the financial backers with U.S. Steel at the turn of the century. That was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and so they've been around, and they're well known, well respected. They also bought Transamerica at the time, who's not a really respected company. They financed the Golden Gate Bridge, and then did a bunch of other things. After the earthquake, they helped people out, and so when they audited the books from Western Reserve Life, they saw that all their business was coming from this small little boutique firm, and they pursued the owner, I guess, like 7 times until he had gotten into a lawsuit, and it would have taken him put him out of business. So rather than doing that, he sold the company and to Aegon, and they are the marketing arm for Transamerica. Western Reserve Life became part of Transamerica, and so in 2008 happened, with the crash in 2008, Transamerica audited their books, and they saw that the only source of business that didn't slow down came from this, World Financial Group. That's what they changed their name to after they got bought out. And they're like, these people have this great marketing and training, and we have this great brand. Why don't we, fall into the same one? So now World Financial Group is a Transamerica company, right? And there's different divisions of World Financial Group. So if you see this shirt I'm wearing, it says World Legacy Builder. It's World Legacy Builder is the largest team under World System Builder. And World System Builder is the largest team in World Financial Group. Okay, and so I had heard about this. I was on another team. I was on what they call the Blue Team in California, and I kept hearing about these other people that were doing something different. We were focused on the variable products, the variable universal life, where your money was actually like in mutual funds, and they call them sub accounts in a policy. And if the market was up, you were up, but if the market was down, you were down. There was no protection. And 2008 was pretty rough on people that had those variable policies. And this other group, though, was selling the index universal life, which were tied to the indexes. S&P 500 was a sort of popular one, and you only needed a life and health license. Now I had to have a life and health Series 6 and 63. I even got my 65 license back then, and there was a lot of compliance, and it was, you know, a lot of scrutiny. They did a lot of compliance issues with them, and but this other group, just the ones with the life and health license, those guys were doing really well, and there was this one lady I heard about. She's a little Asian lady. She was a nurse for like 25 years, and in 6 months, she had really broken English at the time. In 6 months, she replaced her income she had 2 jobs as a nurse, and she replaced her income from those 2 jobs with this company in 6 months. And I'd heard about her, and so when I came, I got my world kind of turned upside down with 2008. I was in the mortgage real estate business, and that was, you know, I lost everything. And then my dad died in 2009. My wife divorced me, so I went through into quite a tailspin. So I did other things. I did anti-piracy security out in the Indian Ocean. That led me to the drone business, which was kind of exciting, but then the FAA put a blanket restriction on that. That got me into the LED lighting business. Up in Dallas, the guy that figured out putting electric current through a silicone rock and make it glow came from Dallas, and I used to work for his best friend and did their estimating. And but that was hard because LED lights were more expensive. And then I came down here to the Valley, and I started an LED lighting rep company. And that was like feast or famine, you know, literally. And I found this office for the same company I worked for in California, but it was this other group. And the lady that had that office was this lady, Bernadette Kim. I got very excited about that. So she trains me.
Excellent. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back, and you'll continue with the story of once you met Bernadette. I just have to run the idea at the top of the hour. Okay.
To be continued. To be continued.
Let me squeeze right behind you.
That just said to be continued.
Continue.
To be
Squares are
continued.
popping up. They were telling me the little squares are popping up.
That
There we go.
I'll try and be your to be continued.
Yes, to be continued.
To be continued.
Squares are popping up.
How many kids do you have?
4.
Are you the oldest?
No, my 17-year-old is the oldest.
Oh, 17-year-old. You got a sister? Boy or girl? You're 17-year-old.
Oh, girl. I got 3 girls and a boy. Just one boy. Okay, never mind.
So I was the oldest, but I had 3 sisters.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, no, he's second from the youngest.
The oldest one, I convinced her she was ugly, but the other 2, I couldn't. They were too cute. I couldn't do that. The older sister, she wasn't ugly. So I just made her think she was.
All right, let's go back. All right, welcome back. For those of you that are just joining us, we are talking with Ruben Lowing, former Navy SEAL and now financial advisor with WFG, World Financial Group. And he was telling us about the startup or the history of his company, World Financial Group. And right now we got to the point where he made it to the Rio Grande Valley and met Bernadette, who was the CEO.
Yes.
Okay.
She's a CEO, and she's world famous she's famous in her company. We're all over North America, U.S. and Canada. We have like 300 offices, and she's highly respected. And she's who I trained. And what they do is their emphasis is financial literacy. And so they came up with this book, Saving Your Future. There's, over 1 million in circulation. They had a campaign. It took them 5 years to educate 1 million families in financial literacy with this book. And it's got all kinds of, it's brand agnostic. You're not going to see anything about any name companies, but it's talking about all kinds of strategies, the law of compound interest, the rule of 72. It's got everything you want to you know, you want to know about money and finance, and the how taxes affect your money, the tax now, tax later, tax advantage categories. They got the anything you want to know about insurance, investments, retirement. It's all in this book, and it's it's they have this introduction. In the introduction, they talk about U.S. and Canada, and in the U.S. this is 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. 33% of or more than 77 million Americans don't pay their bills on time. 39% carry credit card debt from month to month. Only 59% of adults say they have any savings. And worse, more than half think it's acceptable to walk away from their mortgage if they can't afford to pay it. And so, I ask people, do you think things are better now or worse?
And of course, most people would say worse.
Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. Now, what's really funny is they talk about, how we got here. There's cycles. There was World War II, and then the soldiers came back and got with their wives and their girlfriends, and Shazam! Then came the baby boomers, right? And the baby boomers moved through time, from Gerber baby food to Tonka toys and Corvettes and Mustangs, and they create these bubbles moving through time. Okay. Now there's also this. You ever seen this three-legged stool taught in school?
Yes.
They did. You had the same.
Yeah.
So it was 11th grade in a U.S. government class. Mr. Diot, he just recently retired. He taught us this, right? So this is saying that 1/3 of your income should be personal savings. And we just talked about how that's going. People aren't doing really well there, right? And then 1/3 is supposed to be company pensions. Who do you know that's got a company pension?
Yeah.
Right? They kind of went the way of the dinosaur. And then Social Security. Well, there was an article out that Social Security, this whole COVID thing is gonna probably last 2 years less. Less time you're taking off of Social Security than there were, right? So basically, I used to tell people that the three-legged stool is broken, but they just taught us. Imagine if somebody came to your house and said, "This is how you got to get it going." What would you tell them? What are you smoking, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so what we teach a different strategy, and it's we tell people that they need to make money, save money, grow the money, and protect their money, and this is the foundation. It's like a house. You need a foundation, right? And so the baseline of the foundation is protection. So when I say that, what comes to mind for you when I say protection?
Insurance.
That's right. We want to make sure that if something happens to you, that your family's taken care of it. Like I said, if you step off the curb tomorrow and you get hit by a bus, is there enough? Do you have enough protection that your family can stay in the same house? They can eat the same cut of meat. They can drive the same vehicles. Your kids can go to college. Or your wife got to pack up and figure out whether she's going to live with your parents or hers, right? And so that's the basis of what we talk about. But if things come back to that, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit, then there's debt management. Okay, so you got to get the debt under control before people can really, start focusing on saving a lot, right? But we have a strategy to do that where you can, if you make extra money, you can save that money, and just putting the strategy to work, you can pay your debt off faster, lower your effective interest rate. It's called a debt roll-up. And then, of course, you need to have an emergency fund, because if you don't have an emergency fund, then everybody has an emergency. It's just a matter of when. You're going to go back to the credit cards or go to the bank and get a loan, right? And then you're back in debt. So you got to have an emergency fund. They suggest 3 to 6 months in reserve. Okay, and then you start talking about investments. Now, when I mention investments, what do you think of?
Stock market, everything from crypto to stocks, bonds.
Okay. Well, then we talk about all that in here. Okay. And so they go through. So we go through this with people, and one of the things, one of the pages here is the how taxes affect your money. Do you know how your money's taxed?
No, would you like to share that with us?
Well, there's 3 different categories. There's the tax now, which would be typical way people hold their money in a checking account, a savings account, or a bank CD, stocks, and mutual funds. And that's fine. Those are good ways to hold your money that you're using to function with. So you need to have liquid money so you can pay your rent, and you can buy your groceries, and you pay your electric bill, and buy gas, right? But you don't want to have all your money in those accounts. What's the return in a savings account now?
Oh, next to nothing.
Yeah, like less than 1%. So what the government did is it came up with some plans to help people to defer taxes and encourage savings. And it happened, like the 401k came about under Ronald Reagan. And then his idea was that the employees would be invested in their companies and have ownership, and then taking more pride and work harder and the companies would do better and they would do better. Well, then they started, with these plans, they started adding investments in other companies and then in mutual funds in these accounts, right? And so the way the incentive is you get a tax deduction on your contribution. So what you put toward these accounts to a certain limit, you can deduct off your annual income tax, lower your effective or your tax profile. Okay, so you pay less in taxes. It grows tax deferred, so it's going to grow faster. And then when you retire, you're going to be taxed at your regular income tax rate, and it's usually going to be a lot more money than you put in because it's going to grow, right? So then, and those are categories of that would be the 401k or the 403b or the TSP, IRAs, SEP IRAs, annuities, and pensions. Those all fit in that category. And they all have different idiosyncrasies and limits. And then there's the tax advantage category. Okay, so this would be, you wouldn't get a tax deduction on the contribution, but you get the tax deferred growth, so it would grow faster like the other types, the tax later category. But when you take it out, you don't pay tax on that. Do you know of any investments that are like that?
No, not off the top of my head.
You ever heard of a Roth IRA?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's what the Roth IRA does. Okay, do you know the limits on a Roth IRA?
No, I don't.
Well, it's $6,000 annually if you make less than $100,000 a year. So if your adjusted gross income is over $100,000 a year, you can't take advantage of a Roth IRA. Okay. Now, there's other categories that are the tax advantage, which you're not taxed on the gain, but that would be like a 529 college savings plan, but that's only for college, for your children, or if your children don't go to college, your nieces and nephews. But it's got to be used for college. You don't get that tax deduction. Then there's municipal bonds. Municipal bonds, they get a little bit better rate of return than a bank CD or savings. They get, usually you'll buy them at a discount, like 5%. So you buy a $100 bond, you pay $95 for it, and then at the end of the year, you get that 5% for sure, and you might get more. Okay, as long as you keep rolling it over, you don't pay tax. Okay, well, you don't pay tax. You're not going to pay federal income tax on the gain in a municipal bond. If you're states that have state tax, you'll pay. Okay, but not for federal income tax. And I like to use them like as a emergency fund. Get a little bit better rate of return. You just have to make a phone call, and then you get a check for whatever you need. So it's a good source. It's a good source. I like to use it for an emergency fund. And then there's the health savings plans. But again, just like the 529, you only get the tax benefit if you're using it for education. This, you only get the tax benefit if you're using it for hospital bills and doctor bills. Okay, and then there's two other categories. Now this one, the limits are a lot more than you would find in a 401k or, you know, the qualified plans of an annuity or whatever. They're a lot more flexible, and money, you know, money grows tax deferred and it's tax free when you take it out. It's based on how much you make. So if you're a W-2 employee, you can be employed. In fact, let's go back. If you're in the military, you can be insured for. You can have your bucket of money 5 times greater than your annual income. Okay, and that's only because they already get the service group life insurance, $400,000. Okay, if
that's
you're
term.
That's a term, right? And once you leave the military, it goes away, unless you replace it with something outside of the military, right? And then, if you're W-2'd, your bucket of money is 10 times greater than your income. Okay, and so if you something happens to you, your family should be covered for 10 years of your income. Okay, if you're self-employed, your bucket of money, and you notice I'm saying bucket of money instead of insurance, and I'm doing that for a reason, because people don't really understand what insurance is. Okay, we're going to learn today. Okay, if you're self-employed, your bucket of money can be 20 times your income. Now, why do you think if you're self-employed, you get to have a bigger bucket of money than you do when you're a W-2?
Because you don't have access to, I guess, like a TRS or any sort of retirement, or or insurance that's maybe under a cafeteria plan or something at a school district or at a job, or
Just because of Social Security.
Again, okay.
Because if you're self-employed, most people who are self-employed don't pay into Social Security. Okay, so they don't have that to fall back on. So they need to do it. Basically, they need to have their own plan. Okay, and so you can do that with life insurance. So this is what happens with life insurance. There's 3 different types of life insurance. We talked about that earlier. Okay, and there's the whole life, right? Which, you better pay for your whole life. Right, the money you put in is what you have in it. It doesn't grow very much, okay, but you're covered for that amount. Then there's term, which is for a specific period of time. It is pure insurance, and if 90% of term policies do not pay out, more people outlive the term of their insurance. So all that money they put into it, they don't benefit from one bit. The insurance company does. The insurance company loves people to, lapse their policies and, get term, so they don't have to pay out. They're just collecting money, and they're okay with that. Okay. Well, then there's the universal life. We talked about that. There's variable universal life, where you're in the market and you're taking the risk with the market. And then there's the index universal life, which is tied to an index. And there's a floor, anywhere from 0 to 2%, depending on the carrier. And they have a cap, anywhere from 8 to 15%. So if the market does more than that, you don't get that. But that's how they pay for the years that there's a loss. Okay. But there's things you can do with that. There's the riders for long-term care. So if something happens to you and you have a stroke or you get Alzheimer's and you have to go into a nursing home, they can use up to 90% of your death benefit to pay for your long-term care needs. So when you die, whatever's not used goes to your heirs. Okay, and but it's something that you can have in place. Now, what's happened recently in Washington State, like 2 months ago, they passed the public long-term care program. So it's a mandatory payroll deduction to pay a premium for $35,000 for long-term care if you live in the state of Washington. And they gave them like 6 weeks to show that they had coverage greater than the state 35,000, and or they were going to be they could opt out, and if they didn't, they were mandatorily into the state's program. So now California and a whole bunch of other states around the country, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, they're all getting ready to start their own plan, right? And so we've been talking to them quite a bit, trying to educate them so they understand they're better off. They'll probably get better coverage, more coverage, and their money will work for them. And if they don't go into a nursing home, then that money's theirs they can use for their retirement, or they can use for their heirs. So that's something that we're educating people on right now. That's financial education covers a lot of bases.
Yep, and if you are just joining us, we're talking with Ruben Lowing from World Financial Group, and World Financial Group offers workshops in many subjects, such as the ones that we've been discussing today. But some of the topics include increased cash flow, debt management, emergency fund, proper protection, savings and wealth, asset accumulation strategies, funding for college or university, retirement planning, utilizing investment vehicles, your health and wellness, estate preservation, and more. You can reach him at area code 956-255-0061. That's 956-255-0061, or via email at ruben.lowing@gmail.com, and that is REUBEN.LOWING@gmail.com.
We're going to do a workshop tonight, and do you have the Zoom credentials?
Yes, I do, and I'm going to be posting them on our Facebook account, so you can have access to that.
Yeah, so 7 o'clock Central Time, I'll be at that. I love how you do that, though. You say, the estate planning, right? Well, you say real estate planning. I'm like, that's a great. You couldn't have planned it better to segue into what I want to talk about now. You've heard about cryptocurrency, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot of people making a lot of money on cryptocurrency. I know many of them. Okay, and the government wants that to happen, right? And the reason is because they have increased the tax rate, especially the short-term capital gains, from 25% to 39.6%. So if you make money in your cryptocurrency, Uncle Sam's going to get almost 40% of that if you use it, if you spend it within a year. Okay, and they want people to do that, right? All right, but there's ways for people, there's strategies that involve life insurance to help people reduce the amount of tax capital gains they're paying. It's the same strategies used for real estate. I used to be a real estate broker, mortgage broker in California. And the reason right now that there's you hear a lot about the lack of inventory in real estate right now, which is driving the price up, is because of the taxes. So if you're a real estate investor, if you own a house, you don't pay capital gains on the equity of your house for the first $500,000 in equity in your house. If it's an investment property, though, you got to pay the capital gains on the sale of that house unless you do a 1031 exchange. You got to buy a property of equal or greater value. And that was always a trick, trying to get the financing approved and everything done with the, within the window of being able to, somebody sells a house and they find another one that's equal or greater value to buy, and getting it closed before the limit runs out for capital gains. Well, there's strategies that they put into place to help people, and that would be a trust strategy. And if it's over $1 million, it's a deferred tax strategy. Okay, what that is there's a third party. It could be a trust, or it could be an individual fiduciary, and that money goes to the trust if it's less than $1 million. If it's more than $1 million, it goes to the licensed fiduciary, and he gives you the money in the form of a loan that's not paid. You don't pay the balloon in 30 years. So if you put that money to work and get at least 7% return, which means it's with the rule of 72, which we teach in this book. Okay, whatever interest rate you earn on your money divided into 72 determines how fast your money doubles. Your money would double every 10 years, so your money would double 3 times before you got to pay it back. Okay, and if you have it in a life insurance contract, you don't pay tax on it either. All right, and just in the beginning of 2001, Transamerica and the largest estate planning attorney firm in the country came up with this strategy with a finance premium, where if you're using trust strategy, so you would use a trust strategy if your capital gains are less than $1 million, and then you would get a accepted offer. You would sell the property to the trust for that amount, and then the trust would deliver the property to the new owner, and as long as the money stayed in the trust, you don't pay capital gains. People would take a stream of income and they would pay income tax on that. Well, now, by doing a finance premium where rates are less than 4%, you borrow the money to pay the premium on an index universal life. It's going to grow tax deferred, and it's tax advantage when you take it out. And that's the only way to get money out of your capital gains less than $1 million on real estate. But it's the same. Those strategies are exactly the same for cryptocurrency.
Those strategies that you're mentioning are typically only reserved for the very savvy, for those that do the research, for those that study, for those that are wealthy. And so we appreciate you sharing those strategies with us and with our audience today.
Well, that's the whole reason our company even exists. There's everybody out there everybody in the financial services world is going for the top 2%, trying to roll over their 401ks or their annuities and their IRAs, right? But very few people are talking to the people that in the 98%. What usually happens is they go on an interview and they start crunching the numbers, seeing what you're bringing in, what you're taking out, what you're spending, and when they get to the point where somebody's, they're not making, there's no margin, there's no room to invest, then they just hand the business card and say, well, call me when you start making more money. Where we, and especially me, because of my background, I was working as a debt management consultant, I'll roll up my sleeves and start, let's whittle our, sharpen this pencil and let's figure out where we can create some margins, right? And then, like I was talking to you with what you do, right? There's some famous people that were in our company that do podcasts all the time, and what they're doing is they're promoting the business of the people that they represent, that they're doing their finances for. So the more money they make, the more money they can invest with them. Mm-hmm. You see how that works, mm-hmm. Right? And so but you can do that with anybody. Just like start teaching them. Start learning what they can do, what their skills are. What do they have as far as skill-wise that's of value, and give them a little coaching or take them somewhere, that somebody who's doing that and making money off it can teach them, right? and then, you know, next thing you know, they're making more money, and you've already got them set up. You got their protection set up, and you've got their emergency fund. You know, they start working their emergency fund, and then they have their then they can start looking at their investments, right? But it all goes right back to the you can get that by setting up the right foundation with the protection, the insurance. You can have that bucket of money already waiting for them to start for the investments. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Well, if you're just joining us, you know we're talking with Ruben Lowing from WFG, World Financial Group, and he's talking to us about the services that are offered and workshops offered at the World Financial Group. And in particular, there is a workshop today at 7 o'clock, and I just posted the link on Zoom if you can't make it out to their location. Now, where is it located if they want to physically go and go to this workshop?
Yeah, 2617 West Trenton Road in Edinburgh. And if you go there, you'll meet me. I'm the white guy with the shiny head.
And his number again is area code 956-255-0061. That's 956-255-0061. His email is ruben.lowing@gmail.com, which is REUBEN.LOWING@gmail.com. And so I know that we've got to wrap this up because we've got to release you to go to the meeting that's going to take place in a little bit. But what would you like to, if you could leave a thought for our audience, what would that be?
Well, there's two other things that we haven't discussed that we talked about yesterday. And that the one is we don't just work with, you know, the lower end. I brought somebody to Bernadette, and he had a 401k. He was retiring from his job, working for one of the large hospital complexes here in the valley, and his 401k was Transamerica, and Bernadette helped set that 401k up for that company. Okay, so we can do all that, and then the other aspect is there's another product. I call it the Human Mutual Fund, where, you know, like I'm 58 years old. I know I don't look it, but I'm 58 years old, and it's better to start early, okay, because your cost of insurance is less because you're younger and healthier and you're less risk. But when you get to middle age, right, there's this Human Mutual Fund, basically teaching other people and helping other people and mentoring other people. You can make overrides and commissions and trails, right, that can fortify what you've done for your retirement. And so I'm always looking for people, especially if they're good with people, good with paperwork, and bilingual.
So if you're interested in learning more and interested in possibly doing this as a business to help people, then please contact Ruben Lowing, area code 956-255-0061. That's 956-255-0061. Well, the doors will always be open here at 97.7 FM for you, and we want to welcome you back for part 2, because I know that there's a lot more that you know you can discuss about what WFG does, about what World Financial Group does. But just to recap, some of the things that we discussed were topics included increased cash flow, debt management, emergency fund, proper protection, savings and wealth, asset accumulation strategies, funding for college, retirement planning, utilizing investment vehicles, your health and wealth, estate preservation, and lots more. Thank you for helping us, for shedding some light on some of these topics. I know that some of these topics can be rather difficult because or confusing to a lot, like myself, because we don't make the time to do the research. But thank you for putting it.
Well, that's our main emphasis is training. We have at least twice a week, you know, Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings, we have our workshops, and then here physically. But then also we can go to people's houses, their office, uh, Starbucks, whatever. But they have, when COVID hit, it blew up. Our company blew up with Zoom, and so there's like 4 to 6 different workshops a day going on Zoom every day. So we can work with anybody's schedule. There's topics. Sunday they always do. Sunday at 3 o'clock, they do the college preparation call. Talking to people how you have your money structured the right way, you're better odds for your child to get financial aid. If you have assets that are in an insurance contract, it doesn't count against the child on the FAFSA form, so they can qualify for greater financial aid. That's some of the things that they talk about on Sunday.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again. We're going to be posting up the Zoom link on our Facebook account, so you can go and check out the virtually check out the workshop. But if you're in person, they're located on Trenton, right? Can you give us that address again?
2617 West Trenton Road.
That's right. Well, thanks again. Thanks for coming out. Thank you for your service to this great nation, and thank you for providing this service as well through World Financial Group for the benefit of everyone. These are topics and subjects that everyone needs to take advantage of.
Yeah, everybody needs what we have.
Yep, everyone needs life insurance. Everyone needs to know about debt management. Everyone needs to have an emergency fund. Savings and wealth. Funding for college.
If you don't get your money working for you, you will work for the rest of your life.
That's right, and that's why the subject of this particular show is money controlling you, or are you controlling your money? Thank you very much for joining us today. We welcome you back for part 2 at a later date. But until then, stay safe and keep listening to 97.7 FM The City.